Well, hello again, BookTube. I wanted to do a sort of Friday Reads video for you. I've seen a bunch of booktubers that have been doing these sort of Friday Reads videos. I've never really done them because I just didn't think I had a whole lot to talk about, but I looked at the books that I've been reading over the past week and I thought, well, I could probably make a little video about them. If you don't know, it being Friday, a bunch of your favorite and most hated booktubers make these videos called Friday Reads, where they give you a sort of a status update on what they've been reading in the past week, what they've been liking, what they have not been liking. And so I thought I would do that, talk to you a little bit about some of the books I've been reading. The one book that I did finish this week. It is a mere pittance of a thing, very tiny, and that's Ray Bradbury's The Illustrated Man, this collection of science fiction short stories that he compiled together in, I think it was 1951 or 1952, and I made a video on this yesterday and talked about it. I liked it okay. I did not love it. I think it was just one of those things where I'm not the target audience. I have a love-hate relationship with Bradbury's writing, and so sometimes I like it, sometimes I find it really kind of exhausting, for lack of a better term. I just think it's a bunch of purple prose and not a whole lot of substance to it, and I have fallen out of love with that sort of literary gimmick over the past couple years. That's why I really don't read Cormac McCarthy all that much anymore. It just kind of bores me at this point, and it's just sort of an author like spinning plates on a pole, trying to distract you or entertain you. So that runs throughout this collection. Again, I don't think I was the target audience. It's just like I never read science fiction. I love Dune. Dune is one of my favorite books, but that's really the only science fiction book I've read. That just isn't something. That's not a genre I think about reading all that much. The same with fantasy, but also I just think that I was really kind of bored by these stories, and this seems like it would be really good YA fiction. It's a perfect book for, say, middle schoolers or high schoolers. Past that, I think it's a little bit elementary, I guess. But I did finish it, and I put out a video on it if you want to see me sort of give a really lukewarm review of it, discussion of it. So this is one book that I finished. And then another book that I've read this before. This is a reread for me. But I've been listening to it on audio this time rather than reading it. And this is right on the doorstep of Jane Austen July. This is Pride and Prejudice. This is the Bantam mass market paperback that I read this in the first time. I think I read this last March. Yeah, a little over a year ago, and just fell in love with it. I always make the joke of, I don't care if this makes me lose my man card. I absolutely love this book. And it's also the 2005 film with, I think Keira Knightley plays Elizabeth, and the guy who plays Mr. Darcy, his name is escaping me now, but that 2005 film, I don't know how many times I've watched that. I love that movie. But then I finally read the book last year, and I really liked it a lot. The one thing I've noticed in listening to the audiobook version rather than reading it is I'm catching a lot of the sort of verbal jabs and the really sarcastic humor that Jane Austen has. I think when I was reading this, a lot of the humor was lost on me. There were plenty of moments in the book that I thought were really, that I thought were funny, just, that sort of really sardonic sense of humor that's entirely my sense of humor, especially Mr. Bennet. He is I share my humor is very similar to his, but yeah, I think listening to the audio version of it has really helped me to catch on to a lot of the humor that I missed the first time in this, because this is a very funny book, very funny book, very magical book. So yeah, I've been reading this. I think I intend to listen to the audiobook version this time because I plan on, in the month of July, for Jane Austen July, that's a whole month of July dedicated to celebrating and reading Jane Austen. I have that Penguin Classic Deluxe edition of her complete novels, that big giant door stopper of a thing that gives you carpal tunnel if you read it for too long. I thought about just picking that up for the month of July and just blasting through all of her novels, because Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility are the only ones of hers that I've read. And I really want to read her other books. I've just never gotten around to doing it. Sense and Sensibility, I had a very lukewarm reaction to. I did not like it nearly as much as this. I thought it was just okay. It's very much a first novel, if I could be pretentious and say that. But, yeah, so I've been listening to this, but this is just, I wanted to hold this up because it's the edition that I read the first time. And then yesterday I started reading one of the Bronte sisters. Started reading The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte, often considered the sort of, I guess, the problem child of the Bronte sisters, if you don't count Branwell, the brother. And so I've read Jane Eyre, and I put out a video about Jane Eyre yesterday. This month celebrated June Eyre, so I thought, well, when in Rome. I've read Jane Eyre and I've read Wuthering Heights, and those deserve the love that they get. And I never really got around to reading Anne Bronte because she's just not nearly as celebrated as her sisters are. And so I eventually found a copy of this. This is like a Dover Thrift edition. These are kind of cool because they only give you the text of the novel. It's not like a Penguin Classic, if you've ever heard of Dover Thrift. It's not like Penguin Classic where there's a big critical apparatus, there's a big introduction, notes at the end and then sort of an index at the end of the book. This is strictly, they give you the text of the novel. This thing's about like 450 pages, and then that's it. Nothing else. So, and also they're really cheap. Like I think I got this for like $5, which for a new book is that's a bargain. That's a deal. So I started reading this yesterday, and I'm really liking it. It's vastly different from the Bronte sisters. Their writing style and I don't want to say their sense of morality, but the mood that they put the mood and atmosphere that they put the reader in is vastly different from this one. So this is much darker, more brooding, and things like that. But I intend to continue with this. Intend to soldier on and read it. I'm really liking it so far, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I was reading a little bit about this novel. Of course, this was like the other sisters' novels. This was published under the male pseudonym of Acton Bell, and this was Anne Bronte's second novel. She published Agnes Grey before this one. I think this is considered, among the literati, this is considered the better of her two novels. And so, yeah, I'll be interested to see how this compares to Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre, because everyone talks about those. Nobody talks about poor Anne. So, yeah, I'll continue on with this one. And then this last one that I've been reading today, I technically started it last night, and I've been barreling through it today. Like I work in a library, and so in the area in the library that I work in, it's often like it's a student job, and I have a lot of downtime, and I didn't have any work to do, any classwork to do for the week, because it's Friday and nobody's on campus anyway, especially in the summer. And so I've been blasting through this book just all day. Really, I've been neglecting poor Anne, but she's not unfamiliar with that. And so I've been reading this, Joyce Carol Oates. This is I think her most recent novel, Butcher. And I think, this is the first of her novels that I've read. I've always heard of her, but I've never read any of her books. I think she's most famous for, I think it's called Blonde, the novel about Marilyn Monroe. She wrote a novel, a famous horror novel about Jeffrey Dahmer called Zombie. And often, from my understanding, I don't know much about her. This is the author on the cover, and it seems like she writes mostly historical novels, sort of like a horror bend to them, and she takes historical events and researches the crap out of them and creates a narrative, creates a novel about them. And so this one is about the early days of psychiatry. We follow this, most of the story is told from the perspective from the journal of this doctor who was a real person, was a real psychiatrist. His name was Silas Weir. And this whole thing is about him taking over a lunatic asylum in Trenton, New Jersey. I think it was called the Trenton Asylum for Female Lunatics. This is set in like the early 1850s, really before mental health was even established, before Sigmund Freud. And so a lot of this is just a narrative of what it was like in those really early days, in those infant days of psychiatry and mental health. And reading this book, it has been a terrible day to have eyes reading this, because this Silas Weir, the character Silas Weir, not the real Silas Weir, the character, he is the founder of gynopsychiatry, which is basically psychiatry with a specialization in women. And so it's about his really awful experiments. He called them surgeries, but they were these experimental surgeries that he performed on these female patients in the asylum who, they had no rights. And at this point, if you were a woman during this time, if you did anything that was against the grain, you were just considered a mental lunatic. Then you get thrown into an asylum. And so he becomes the director of this asylum. And so this whole novel is it's told from his perspective about the horrible experiments that he did on these women, and it is disturbing. I'm pretty sure I'm liking it as much as you can. I got about halfway through it today, but this has been shocking. Which I was drawn to this novel because, like, the degree that I'm getting is in mental health, and so the master's degree I'm getting, it has to do with mental health, and so I've always been interested in reading about the history of mental health. If you don't know about the sort of early days of psychiatry and the way that patients with schizophrenia, or the way that patients in mental health facilities were treated in those early days, you would be shocked. You would be appalled. And So Joyce Carol Oates, like, she researched, I would imagine she researched the crap out of this, because the character of Silas Weir is sort of an amalgamation of three different characters, or of three different real psychiatrists in history. And it's a combination of Silas Weir, who was a real psychiatrist, and then two other psychiatrists, and she combines all their personalities into one appalling character. And for the disgusting stuff that is in here, you would never expect this sweet old lady to write something this disturbing. There's a particular chapter in here called The Chair of Tranquility, which was a real thing that they did, that doctors subjected mental patients to, and it would turn your blood cold, which is ironic because a lot of what they did was bloodletting, and so I've been enjoying this. I'll blast through this more tonight, and then probably finish it by the weekend and put out a proper video on it. But yeah, this has been a sobering experience. And this was back in a time, so and the Silas Weir character talks about this. This is in a time in mental health when, especially with women, like, doctors at the time who did not know jack about most diseases. I think this was probably before the time when they even washed their hands or cleansed themselves before they did surgeries. But this is during a time when they believed that hysteria and mental health disorders in women all originated in the female organs, so to speak, and all of their hysteria, all of their wickedness originated from there. Which, the way that men were treated was much better. They trying not to get this video taken down. There's so much that's in here. This could never be filmed. There can never be a film adaptation of this without it being completely sterilized, excuse the pun, about everything in this being sterilized. You could never film this. Silas Weir, he pioneered, well, not really pioneered, but he created this new treatment for treating this sort of this disease called I'm blanking on the name. I think it's like basically like a fistula in the female, and just he did all these terrible experiments on women, and it has been sobering. It has been shocking to read, because if you look up all the stuff that happens in this is what medical doctors did to psych patients up until like the 1950s. And again, the Chair of Tranquility, there was a thing they did called hydrotherapy, which you would basically strap a patient to a chair, and they would lower the patient into this big tub of water, where they would completely immerse them in the water, and they would be in either freezing cold water, like enough to give them hypothermia, or it would be in scalding hot water. And as you would imagine, a lot of these patients died because of it. And so it's really disturbing reading. But anyway, so those are the books that I've been reading over the past week. This sort of, whatever this Friday Reads video is, I wanted to sort of tell you about that. I hope to make more of these in the future. I don't know if I'll be able to do it next Friday because that's July 4th weekend, and as we're all probably in a sort of protracted mourning period regarding that, so I probably won't do anything that Friday, but I'd like to do more of these as I'm reading, if I have stuff to talk to you about. So, yeah, I guess that's everything. I guess I'll see you next time.